Satan came a man with his ideas new and grand, and he said we came from monkeys long ago.
From July 10th until July 21st, 1925, in Dayton, Tennessee, John T. Scopes was put on trial for teaching evolution in a public school. The conflict of the trial and the resulting controversial compromise created has continued to change the way evolution is taught in public schools. On November 24, 1859, Charles Darwin published his first book, The Origin of Species. It suggested the scientific theory that humans descended from a lower level of animals, specifically monkeys. It introduced the idea that populations evolve over time through a process of natural selection. On February 4, 1871, Charles Darwin published his second book, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex. This book focused on the relevance of evolutionary theory to society, with natural and sexual selection being interconnected. The ideas published were very advanced for the time. American schools were currently teaching the Genesis creation narrative, which suggested the origin of the universe and life was based in Christianity. Darwin's books caused tremendous backlash in society as they contradicted many of the core teachings of Christian faith and forced people to choose sides on the debate of evolution versus creationism. By the late 1800s, Darwin's theories had become more widely accepted and evolution was being taught in schools. Early in the 20th century, society's concerns about evolution resurfaced. Following World War I, religious attitudes in the United States shifted again. There was a perceived longing for a simpler pre-war life, prompting many to think about their religious beliefs. In the United States, people began to see a more organized divide between two groups, the fundamentalists and younger modernists. Fundamentalists so strongly disagreed with the theory of evolution that in March of 1925 in Dayton, Tennessee, a group of Southern fundamentalists passed a law called the Butler Act. The law stated that it is unlawful to teach any theory that denies the story of divine creation of man as taught in the Bible. Additionally, any teacher in a state-funded school caught teaching evolution would be found guilty of a misdemeanor and fined for each offense. The American Civil Liberties Union, more commonly known as the ACLU, was founded in 1920. Their main job was to uphold the Constitution. The ACLU found the Butler Act to be unconstitutional, so they placed an ad for a teacher to go against the law in a test trial. In Dayton, Tennessee, John T. Scopes, a 24-year-old substitute science teacher and football coach at Rhea County Central High School, saw the ad and applied. On May 7, 1925, John Scopes was arrested. He was not even sure he had actually committed the crime. All he did was read aloud from Hunter's Civic Biology, which was a state-approved textbook that had a chapter containing information of the theory of evolution. Regardless, his trial date was set for July 10th of the same year. The ACLU offered all legal support for the case. The prosecutor's attorney was William Jennings Bryan, a former U.S. Secretary of State and presidential candidate, while the defense attorney was Clarence Darrow, a leader for the ACLU and prominent lawyer for many famous cases. The trial lasted for 12 days. On the last day, the courtroom was too hot, so they held the hearing outside.
Well, when we heard that day that they were going to be coming down there to that platform, we got over there early and got us a front seat under a big shade tree.
It was Darrow's turn to speak, and what he did was very unexpected. Darrow decided to call the prosecuting attorney, Bryan, to the stand. Darrow proceeded to question Bryan about his beliefs in the Bible. This caused Bryan to admit more than once that he did not take the Bible's creation story literally. Bryan was publicly humiliated.
Bryan up there, sitting on the stand, and Darrow looking down at him and asking him a question and pointing at him. And it's estimated there were about 2,000 people. They thought they'd come to see the closing arguments, but what they got was Darrow's cross-examination of Bryan. Probably the most famous scene in American legal history, and it didn't take place in a courtroom.
The jury left and delivered a verdict only 9 minutes after the closing argument. The jury found Scopes to be guilty and asked him to pay a $100 fine. In the end, the trial was more about evolution versus creationism instead of whether or not Scopes had committed the crime. After Scopes was convicted in 1925, people started to see the impact the trial had on society. Almost immediately, the amount of evolution being taught in public schools dropped dramatically. Although one problem remained, there were virtually no textbooks in Tennessee that did not include the theory of evolution. A few months after the trial, the governor of Texas, Miriam Ferguson, ordered that all pages stating facts of evolution should be literally cut out from textbooks. Other states, including Tennessee, started to follow as well. This caused many authors to either rewrite and republish their books or have them taken off the shelves. Preacher George McReady once said, "Virtually all textbooks on the market have been revised to meet the needs of all fundamentalists." By the 1930s, it was expected that around 70% of all public high schools in the U.S. had removed evolution from their curriculum. It was not until decades later, in 1967, when Tennessee's Butler Act was repealed. In 1968, during the Epperson v. Arkansas case, Arkansas passed a law stating that teaching evolution is illegal. This law violated the First Amendment and the Establishment Clause. The trial made its way to the United States Supreme Court, where they ruled that all anti-evolution laws are unconstitutional. Slowly, the theory of evolution had made its way back into classrooms and textbooks. In 1987, Louisiana passed a law requiring creation science to be taught alongside evolution. The Supreme Court ruled this law unconstitutional as it furthered the idea of religion in schools and therefore violated the First Amendment. Soon after, people started thinking of a compromise between the two theories that could be taught in schools.
Sure. We wouldn't have science if there wasn't compromise between science and religion. All the early scientists believed there was a God. All of them. You take your pick. Galileo, Newton, Copernicus was a Polish priest. I mean, all these early scientists believed there was a God. The God was a mathematician. They bought into what I call the macro design theory. And they wanted to study through mathematics and experiment the design that God built into the universe.
Booming in the 1990s, fundamentalists believed that intelligent design should be taught. Intelligent design is a very controversial theory stating that some things are better explained by an intelligent cause other than natural selection.
The short definition of intelligent design says that life on Earth arose only because of the special act of God in designing the cell, basically. The first single-celled organism is a miracle, in other words. It comes about by a special activity of God. It couldn't arise from chemical processes randomly bumping into each other, So that's intelligent design theory.
Intelligent design was thought to be a compromise for fundamentalists and scientists to agree on a way humans came to be. From the 1990s until the early 2000s, intelligent design is incorporated into public schools' biology curriculum. Yet this compromise continued to result in more conflicts. In the Kitzmiller v. Dover Area School District trial in 2005, local parents represented by the ACLU believed that intelligent design was a creation science. Judge John Jones III declared that intelligent design was unconstitutional and therefore banned from public schools. The conflict on whether to teach evolution or creationism in public schools did not stop after the Scopes trial in 1925. Science curriculum has continued to change so that the religious ideas of creationism are incorporated, and more recently, the failed compromise of intelligent design. The conflict continues even today and has been recently put into the national spotlight.
Also bring into the minds of all of our children all of the theories about the unknowable that some bright day in the future, through science and perhaps through faith, we will find the truth of from whence we come. And I yield back.
The refusal to compromise highlights the deep divide in the United States today.